We are back with another tier list. Today we're going to do every Breaking Bad character tier list. Thing is, we're not actually going to do that though. I tricked you. We're going to talk about the show, analyze it in detail with heavy scrutiny. I'm going to tell you some huge flaws with this show that you've probably never considered, just never thought about it. I've ranked some of the antagonists of the show on this list, and we're going to go through the list, starting with double S tier. Higher than S tier, it's double S. We have two antagonists of the show. Now, granted, Saul Goodman is not the most antagonistic character, not by any means. He often helps Walt and Jesse, but he's incredibly interesting and just a great character. And then we have Gus. Gus is the best of the best, just an insane amount of presence. Truly just outshines Walter White. One of the ultimate bad guys in any show. He just is. He's awesome. So next we have S tier. We have the old man, Gus's buddy. Even with just looking around, hitting the bell on his wheelchair, just an unbelievable amount of presence, just an awesome baddie. Then we have our A tier. We have Tuco and the twins. Tuco, just a lunatic, screaming, pure intensity. The twins, just quiet intensity, ruthlessness. Awesome villains to go up against, just because it makes sense to, when you have to go up against a dorky scientist teacher, that you have somebody who's just bringing such raw intensity. It's a great way to ramp up the tension very quickly. Now, B tier, we have Todd, who is the lame, underdeveloped neo-Nazi. Like, he's kind of a part of the neo-Nazi group, but he's a little more relatable, and that kind of makes him a little more sinister. But ultimately, he just doesn't get his time to shine. He doesn't get the development needed for him to really ever have too much of a presence, or for his actions to really matter that much. Now, Hank's awesome. Just Walt having to deal with him is hilarious, as Hank is a man's man and Walt is a dorky teacher. Really great. Unfortunately, his ending is pretty underwhelming. I would feel like it would be a lot more realistic that Hank would figure out that Walter White is Heisenberg and do a heck of a lot more, be a lot more flexible, because I'm sorry, but them being brother-in-law for like decades, they're going to be family. In fact, he would feel a lot more like Walt is his family than like Skylar and their like kids, like Walt's kids. So I just felt like it didn't pay off in the way I wanted to. So I have to rank him B tier. Really, he, as a character, he should be higher, but I'm ranking based off of them being like an antagonist, and it just, the antagonist part of his character is not there. Next up in C tier, we have Walter White. Now, Walter White, oh no, wait, that's not Walter White. He's got the hat. That's Heisenberg. Heisenberg's the bad guy of this show, the real bad guy. Now, the problem with that is that we got introduced to this show falling in love with Walter White, the dorky, lovable scientist who's over his head. He's a fish out of water. As soon as he defeats Gus, a switch is flipped, and it has everything to do with the show becoming a lot more popular in that time. The show went from initially having a lot of like comic relief to no longer having any of that. It's just this intense, serious drama, nothing but drama, intensity. And Heisenberg just feels cartoonish and dumb. He just feels badly written, right? Because we know that because he was supposed to be Walter White. That's the problem. Walter White was this guy who loved his family, and all of his goals were about his family. Well, it turns out that was all a lie. He was just an evil bastard the whole time who doesn't give a crap about his family and will put his family in any horrible situation that he possibly can. Just genuinely gives zero craps about them or anybody. Whereas Walter White like loved his family and was this enjoyable to watch fish out of water guy, whereas Heisenberg is just this ultra genius who has every solution already figured out, and it's just super lame to watch him go up against people, whereas Walter White was actually very fun to watch him go up against Gus and Tuco. Heisenberg, though, you don't like him because he's just an evil guy. He's not a fun evil guy like say like Negan from The Walking Dead. Heisenberg is just pure evil, doesn't care about anybody, has no humanity to the character. Just all the humanity, every personality trait is just wiped. Like he's just no longer Walter White, and it just happens too fast. There's not really an arc to it. It feels so undeserved and rushed and unplanned. They just figured, oh well, this show is really popular, so we got to change course and make this way more serious than it was before. I'm tired of hearing this crap where people's like, nope, the writer had it all figured out from beforehand. He knew exactly what he was going to do. No, the show changed in terms of budget and popularity. It became this big famous show, and they definitely changed course because they removed so many elements, and it's clear as day to anybody who was a fan of the show early on. The problem is most people binge watch this on Netflix, so they don't really see that season to season difference and how the show evolved over time, and they don't factor in how things like a show becoming more popular means they have a bigger budget and there's more pressure on the people making it, and sometimes that pressure produces a result of the show declining in quality despite it having more funding and resources. And this is a really good example of that, this show right here. In D tier, we have like Todd's like neo-Nazi uncle, unbelievably lame. He doesn't even have time to get any development, just completely pointless, just generic. They should have had a good villain at the end. I mean, think about how memorable like Tuco and Gus are. Instead, the real big bad of the last like season or 2 seasons is this woman, Lydia. She has anxiety, she drinks coffee. That's pretty much it. She's basically just an idiot who has anxiety and drinks coffee. That's the final villain of Breaking Bad. That is the big bad of Breaking Bad. It's Lydia. Now compare her to Gus in your mind for a moment. Think of who is a bigger big boss to have in your show. Is it Gus or is it Lydia? Is it Gus or is it Lydia? Is it Gus? I think it's Gus. I'm gonna go Gus. My vote is Gus, and Lydia is in F tier. She's garbage. Unbelievable that they would waste screen time on her, develop like even showing such a lame, pointless character. A lot of what they have Heisenberg do in the later seasons is incredibly lame and underwhelming, as he is just already outwitted everybody. He's no longer a fish out of water. He is the real big bad, and who he has to face is idiots like Lydia and Todd. Like, it's so unbelievably lame. The decline in quality is actually incredible when you think about it for a moment. Now, one other reason this show declined in quality is actually staring you in the face, and has been throughout this video. So you'll see in my S tier, I have Jesse, Badger, Skinny Pete, and whatever this guy's name is. It's been a while since I watched the show, but my feelings have only gotten more in this direction since I've finished watching the show. I actually watched it start to finish twice. But yeah, so the problem here is that Jesse and his friends aren't in the second half of the show. Now in the first half, you have Walter White, the lovable chemistry teacher who is a fish out of water, who is even a fish out of water within his own family. Now Walter White would go on to become just this evil guy who doesn't care about his family at all. He still has to deal with them, but there's no real comedy and no real tension anymore, as you no longer care about Walter White, or I guess I should say Heisenberg, or his family. Like, you don't care about any of them. You don't care if he accomplishes his goal. His goal, you originally, was to leave his daughter and his family in a much better position. Then it changes. They pull a switcheroo to know he actually just wanted to become a billionaire, and that's his only motivation, and he will destroy his family at the expense of accomplishing that goal, which is completely ridiculous and lazy, but it's what they did. So, well, they remove Walter White, replace him with this lame-o Heisenberg. They also get rid of Jesse. They also get rid of his first friends, right? Think of the comic relief. Think about Walt throwing the pizza early on in the series. Think about this Jesse hanging out with his friends. You have these comic relief characters who are super relatable. Like Jesse's characters, Jesse's friends were awesome characters who everyone wanted to see more of. But Jesse, also shortly after Gus is defeated, guess what Jesse does? He completely distances himself from his friends and stops talking. Jesse does not talk in the second half of this entire series. For like 3 seasons, he is a mute. There is a scene where he's in a kitchen with Hank, and Hank has like, he's hanging out with Hank for a few days, and Hank's trying to get him to talk, but Jesse's not going to talk because he's dealing with trauma. The thing is, you can show trauma in an interesting way where you actually like have some character communication of some kind. But Jesse, there's scene after scene after scene after scene of him not talking, whether he's with Hank or hanging out in his house or doing whatever. He is not talking. His character is, for all purposes, just gone, just removed from the show. And with that comes the friends. You barely see, like, Badger and Skinny Pete occasionally make a appearance here and there, but barely. Maybe like once a season. Like they point laser pointers in like the final episode. Okay, they're out of it, right? And the reason this matters so much is the comic relief. Think about when Walt throws the pizza. Think about how important comic relief is to telling a dramatic story, an intense story, because it gives you that break, because you will never be able to hold dramatic tension throughout the entire run of a show. It's impossible. No show will ever be able to do it. So you interject this comic relief to break that tension intentionally, so people can start feeling other things and then slowly get back and let the tension build again. It's a super critical part of Breaking Bad, and they just removed it halfway through because the show got popular, so they had to change course, and they had to get rid of that because this is a serious show and we have to change all these characters, and it's awful and it feels so undeserved. It's so rushed, and then it just becomes so boring as Heisenberg by himself has to defeat Todd and has to defeat Todd's uncle and Lydia, and it's all just so lame, unbelievably lame and disappointing. So when they came out with that Camaro, that short film or whatever it was, where they actually give Jesse's character an ending, because the way Breaking Bad ends is, spoiler alert, Heisenberg has destroyed his family, has made the money, but Jesse, who hasn't talked for 3 seasons, gets imprisoned. So Heisenberg goes and breaks him out right before he dies. We knew Heisenberg was going to die because he gets a terminal diagnosis in the first episode of the series, so that's not interesting at all. So Jesse gets broken out and drives away. His character, mind you, has not spoken in 3 seasons of the show. So he just drives away, and that's it. We get no character development, no real character ending to Heisenberg or Jesse. There's no reason to care about what's happening because Jesse's in no better position than he was before. Nothing has really happened to him. It's Like, okay, he got imprisoned for a little bit. He's already dealing with like all this mental trauma to where he can't even talk. He's not gonna be traumatized more by being imprisoned by some random dudes. Like, it's all so empty and so lame and such a bad writing and such bad show making. Like, how did the director not realize? How did the writers not realize? How did the people producing this? How did AMC not like step in and be like, "Hey, this is kind of garbage here. Like, what are you doing? You need to make this show what it was and what got it popular. Not this turd you've turned it into." This show is nowhere near the best show ever. So many people say it is, and they've never even considered what I've talked about in this video at all. They don't even consider that halfway through the comic relief entirely as a concept in the show is eliminated, erased. That Walt isn't in the second half of the show. That Jesse may as well be not in the second half of the show because he doesn't talk. His friends are basically not there. Nothing is there. The only thing that's like semi-consistent is Hank, and he's painfully consistent because he won't budge at all, and he doesn't even have it in him to show a tiny bit of humanity and be like, all right, Walt, like, you have to stop doing this, and I'm gonna let you get away with it because you're my brother, man. Not even Hank, the only character that is at least a tiny bit consistent, they can't even write him to have a tiny bit of humanity. It's just so lame. Like, absolutely, the show, the first two, I would say the first two seasons are SS tier. The third season is S tier. The way Gus's character is defeated, I found kind of lame and kind of like cheaty, kind of. I just wanted more out of it, but overall, it's like incredible stuff. It's top level. If it kept that level, it would be clearly a top 5 show ever made. But it doesn't. The last, each season past the Gus stuff is worse than the last. And your final big bad is Lydia. So the show overall is a B tier. In these rankings, I would rank it B. It just becomes disappointing and becomes more and more disappointing as you watch it.